Schönen guten Abend, herzlich willkommen. Einen schönen guten Abend allen, die jetzt hier mit dabei sind. Herzlich willkommen. Herzlich willkommen auch allen, die auf YouTube mit dabei sind und sich den Livestream auf YouTube ansehen. Der Abend heißt Keine Angst vor der Angst. Don't be afraid of fear. Und wir erleben gerade eine Zeit von immer mehr Leiden, von dem drohenden Klimakollaps, der für viele Menschen auf der Welt schon deutlich spürbar ist. Wir haben 2 Jahre Corona-Pandemie hinter uns. Und jetzt kehrt auch noch der Schrecken des Krieges zurück nach Europa. All das wird heute Thema sein. Für Meg Wheatley, die heute Abend mit dabei ist, ist das nichts Unvorhergesehenes. Sie war über viele Jahre als Beraterin in großen System-Change-Prozessen involviert und sagt heute, wir können diesen Kollaps des Systems, der Systeme auf der Welt nicht aufhalten, nicht mehr aufhalten. Aber was wir jetzt tun können, ist sowas wie Islands of Sanity, Inseln der Vernunft gründen. Und wir können lernen, Gemeinschaften zu bilden und das Leiden zu mindern. Meg Wheatley hat die Warriors for the Human Spirit gegründet vor einigen Jahren und auch das Institut. Und mit den Warriors for the Human Spirit, wo ich 2020 teilnehmen durfte, bildet sie Menschen aus, mit klarem Geist und offenem Herzen auf die Welt zu schauen und das Handeln zu stärken, handlungsfähig zu werden. Und vor 10 Tagen habe ich noch im Bett liegend, bin ich früh aufgewacht und habe eine Nachricht, eine Videobotschaft von Meg zum aktuellen Krieg in der Ukraine gesehen. Und ich war sofort wach und habe gesagt, ich muss sie einfach fragen, ob sie bei diesem Summit dabei sein will und ihre Sichtweise auf die Dinge mit uns teilen möchte. Und sie hat dann ganz spontan gesagt, natürlich bin ich dabei. Und dafür bin ich unglaublich dankbar und freue mich sehr, dass sie heute hier ist. Bevor ich Sie jetzt auf die virtuelle Bühne bitte, noch ein paar Hinweise. Du kannst, wenn du gern die Übersetzung hören möchtest, unten auf den Globus klicken und Dolmetschen auswählen. Dann wirst du die Übersetzung von der Michaela hören, die Meg übersetzen wird. Sie stellt das dankenswerterweise kostenlos zur Verfügung. Vielen Dank, Michaela, dafür. Das heißt, dann hörst du die Übersetzung von der Michaela. And if there is anybody who is here that only is English speaking, so please press the interpretation button down on the globe. And then you will hear Meg in English and me as well, because Michaela will translate me then in English. Falls du auf YouTube dabei bist und gerne eine Übersetzung haben möchtest, dann laden wir dich ein, dass du auf den Zoom-Kanal wechselst, weil dort kannst du die Übersetzung bekommen. Also ist noch Platz hier im Zoom-Raum. Komm einfach von YouTube herüber in den Zoom-Raum. Ja, und jetzt darf ich dich, Meg, herzlich willkommen heißen. Schön, dass du hier bist und schön, dass du gerade in diesem Moment hier bist, mit mir, mit uns, um auf die Situation zu schauen, die gerade, wie es gerade in der Welt, was in der Welt gerade los ist und wie wir auf eine reife menschliche Art und Weise darauf antworten können. Du wirst zuerst einen Impuls bringen, wie du eben auf die Welt gerade blickst und hast entschieden, auf eine Praxis uns beizubringen, wie wir jetzt mit dieser Angst umgehen können und wie wir handlungsfähig bleiben. Wir haben eine große Bitte an euch und wir werden das so machen, dass damit wir fokussiert bleiben und klar bleiben, werden wir jetzt gleich, sobald Meg beginnt, den Chat ausschalten, damit wir wirklich zuhören, weil Zuhören eine der wichtigsten Führungskompetenzen ist, die wir haben. und werden den Chat erst einschalten, wenn es darum geht, dass ihr wieder Fragen stellen könnt, sodass wir wirklich mit voller Aufmerksamkeit bei dir, Meg, sind. Danke, dass du hier bist und danke, dass du mit uns das teilst, was gerade dir wichtig erscheint. Willkommen.
Well, thank you, Hema. It was so good you invited me, because I'm really extraordinarily grateful for the opportunity for all of us to be together at this time of terrifying circumstances. And I'm not going to just speak to all of us, myself included, because my fear has been great at this time as well. But I want to speak to us about how we can be useful and present for the people who need us at this time. So it's not important to me that we learn how to deal with our fear. What's important to me is that we define how we can be useful and of help and of support to the people around us. So what makes the difference between us and those who are just caught in their fear is that, one, we have the intention to be of service, and I just expect that of all pioneers of change. And we also then have developed already, I'm sure most of you have many practices to know how to quiet your mind. I hope the majority of you know how to meditate, because I know the conference summit started with John Kabat-Zinn. It's an essential baseline skill for us these days. But what I really want to talk about is how we, taking the phrase that Gandhi, that we all loved, I think it has changed. Now, Gandhi said, "We must be the change we want to see in the world." And I've thought a lot about that recently, and I want to say that we need to be the change we wanted to see in the world, but we lost that one. The world changes. The world changes by things completely out of our control. And for those of us who've been activists all these years, myself included, since the mid-60s, I've been out in the world wanting to create positive change. And I think I succeeded in many places. But the world has changed in spite of our best efforts, in spite of our intentions, in spite of our training, in spite of all the long hours we put into our causes and our projects and our educating and training ourselves. We are in a world that has changed. And so I would like, in this short time with you, to make available the energy and capacities and strengths that are available to us when we face reality and really see it clearly. This is a very perilous, difficult thing to advise, that we really open to the world as it is, that we face reality. But without that, we get into what is an increasingly common drug these days, which is hopium. Now, hopium was a term, I think it was created about 10 years ago, and it was a combination of hope and the drug opium. And I've written quite a lot about hope and fear and the problem with that. But now hopium, I see more and more of us, even people I have the deepest respect for, are grasping for hopium. They're grasping to think that things are going to turn out okay. They're not. And if that isn't clear to you now, it never will be. We are in the most perilous moment for the human race that we have ever faced. And it comes from two directions. What's happening in Ukraine has the very real possibility of quite soon escalating into a war between the United States and Russia. And then we'll be in nuclear Holocaust territory. We could even be in nuclear territory as Putin, who is a true, insane, possessed by some sort of dark energy that is terrifying to observe. But there's a real possibility that when he realizes he has lost, and when he realizes Russia has been destroyed, which is happening now so rapidly and so terribly for Russians, but we're just destroying the very country that he felt that would be his legacy. And he's spoken many times that you don't back people into a corner. He had this experience, I don't know if you've read this, but he had this experience when he was a young man. There were a lot of rats in his apartment, and he would chase them. And one day he chased a very large rat into a corner, and he thought he had cornered the rat, that he captured it, and instead the rat leapt at him and used his head to escape. And that became one of his life messages: don't put people into a corner. That's what we are doing. So I fear his outrage. I fear his decision to just take us all down with him. That's reality. That's what's going on. And then at the level of human affairs, we have just moved into a militarized world. We have chosen for militarism, weaponization. Everything that's being discussed now in Europe is combined and increased military forces. It's happening in the United States as well. It's happening in Japan. All these places that thought they would never want a military now are militarizing and dedicating increased budget. That is the world that has changed in spite of our efforts. I'm not even going to talk about climate, but that's the other harsh reality we have to deal with. In spite of all our efforts, we have not had the will, the courage on the part of leaders. And when that recent IPCC report came out just as the Ukrainian war started, right there you could see the terrifying position we're in. It is very dark, it is very dire, and there is an important contribution for all of us to make. And that is to understand these realities. The world changed. We can still be the change we wanted to happen everywhere. In fact, it's more and more important that we become the best embodiments of human qualities, human capacities. We become kind and present and rational and thoughtful and caring and compassionate. Most people will not experience those qualities any longer because when the human neurological system is under threat, we just become beasts. We become human animals, not human beings. We retreat in fear. We fear everything, including anything that's different, anyone who looks different, and we are manipulated by leaders, by fear. I'm just citing both neuroscience and human history. And for us to think otherwise, for us to think we still have an opportunity to change this by some sort of collective awareness or some sort of collective action, or by protesting even, If we think we have the capacity to change things, we are engaging in the greatest, most dangerous deception, which is that human beings can change the world, whereas what we're seeing right now is the world changes itself according to its own laws and dynamics. This is so clear with climate, and it's so clear right now that if we don't accept what is going on and make a conscious choice of who we want to be for the people around us, who we want to be when we are protesting, who we want to be when we're raising our voices, which we must keep raising our voices in protest. I am trying to not silence us, but actually shift us to a different clarity that, yes, I have to speak up. I have to be on the streets. But I have to be much more than that. I have to be present for the people around me. I have to be present and try and create the best relationships that are possible for the people I work with, the people I participate with, my family, my community members, my friends. Because we can choose not to be destroyed by fear. We face reality, and in facing the reality, we, of course, encounter, it's more than fear. For me, it's just pure terror at what might happen. But I know that when I face reality and don't get lost in hopium, really don't get lost in any form of denial, then and only then do I find new energy, do I find new commitment, new levels of devotion and dedication. I realize who I want to be for this moment, and I have to say that it is not only energizing, it's also focusing, and there are many moments of joy in being available, being the change, embodying the best human qualities for other people. And then when we're in those good relationships, moment to moment, when we're present for one another, even if we're crying and weeping together, or engaged in dark humor, which can be very life-saving, although I find it harder and harder to laugh at anything these days. When we are fully present for one another, that's when we discover where joy is found. And joy is found in our deepest moments of relating to one another, that many people call communion, and I would agree with that. It's like it's not you and it's not me. It is truly a we moment of just being present for one another, and that always feels joyful. So in the past, people would listen to whatever I was saying, because the pattern of collapse has been writ large in what's happening, and I wrote a book about it in 2017, Who Do We Choose to Be? But people didn't want to believe it and just would categorize me as, well, you're very pessimistic, aren't you? That's not the point here, folks. The point is, if we don't face reality now, which is far beyond anything, I didn't think we'd go to war in Europe. I really didn't. Or war, global war. I really thought there would be more wisdom here, but there isn't. Because Putin is absolutely insane and just hell-bent on destruction now. Doesn't matter who it is, he's hell-bent on destruction. But what I was clear about all along is that when we face reality, when we really see what's going on, only then Can we choose work that is meaningful? Can we choose contributions? Now, we've all been seeking good, meaningful work for decades, some of us, and we still want to contribute meaningfully. But the times, the circumstances dictate what is meaningful. We don't decide what's meaningful right now. We tune in and we see what people need from us. And when we're capable of doing that, when we're capable of just seeing what is needed, not some fantasy or drug-induced, hopium-induced fantasy, well, maybe we should just do this and then things will get better. No, when we tune in to reality, then we find what is meaningful at that time. It doesn't mean we stop protesting. It doesn't mean we stop our causes for social justice, environmental correction, community building. For me, community building is the essential task right now, because humans can get through anything as long as we're together. And this has brought us together in beautiful new ways. So, it's only by facing reality and not getting addicted to some possibility that really doesn't have any basis in reality right now. When we face reality, we develop new energy and new strength. And then we can serve what other people need from us, and we can stop this crazy infighting if we're engaged in a community event, or if we're bringing together people for some cause. You know, I look at now all this arguing and posturing and ego displaying among people as, folks, let's get real here. See where you are needed. I mean, we've known for many, many years that this is the me, I, me, mine, in George Harrison's wonderful song, that's what characterizes most people. Well, no more time for that. The true satisfaction now is service. And the service that's available to us is different than what we constructed or thought about in the past. And it's very present, and it's very necessary that we learn how to be present for people and to embody the finest human qualities of being present, open-hearted, generous with our time and attention, good listeners. All these things that we thought were skills are actually deep attributes of the human spirit. So we need to learn how to embody that. So what I'd like to do is teach you a practice that really is incredibly powerful for how to be present. And the practice, in its name, is really important. It's called taking your seat. It's a practice of getting grounded. You may be familiar with some of the things I'm going to teach you now, but it's the name of this practice indicates why we do it. I mean, many people learn to ground, learn to be centered, learn to meditate for their own internal well-being. This practice is developing stability in ourselves, developing a stable presence that can then withstand all the terrible forces coming at us, or even when we can feel attacked by reality these days because it's so harsh. So taking your seat means you are declaring yourself that I want to be here, I want to be present, I want to be grounded and stable so that I don't add more problems to the situation, so that I don't add more anger, I don't add more aggression, I don't add more fear. So I develop this sense of internal stability. But in taking my seat, I am doing that because other people need me. Other people need to be with someone who is present, and that's our role. So it's a very wonderful supportive practice, but the first step is claiming that I want to be available. And in order to be available and present for people and not add to the fear and aggression that is everywhere now, I need to learn how to take my seat. So that's why I wanted to teach this to you. So the first action of taking your seat is wherever you're sitting, is to sit with a nice, comfortably upright posture so that you're not slumped over like this, but you just let your spine lift you up. And we'll talk more specifically about that. But I just want to say, in my own experience, I understand that no matter how painful my back feels, which it usually does, I know that my spine wants to support me, to feel confident, to feel dignified. We all have an interior dignity. In fact, one of my most favorite quotes that I got from a young aid worker in Syria when Syria was being destroyed by Russian bombardment, just as they're apparently going to do in Ukraine. She was delivering food and the bombs were off in the distance, and she said, "I did not feel fear. I felt dignity." That's the interior possibility, that when we straighten up, we're opening to our inherent dignity. And that's important for offering ourselves to other people. So once your spine is comfortably erect, this is not, rigid or unnatural. This is a very natural movement of the spine. Now go down to your sit bones, in German, same word, Sitzbones, and just move your butt in your seat, just so you feel grounded in your buttocks, in your butt. Just wiggle back and forth. And then place your feet firmly on the floor, not crossed-legged or anything. Just get your feet planted on the floor, because your feet are the source of where you will access energy from outside your body. So this is also a practice for accessing, very importantly, accessing the energy of earth, and then we're going to access the energy of sky. So with your feet planted firmly on the floor, it doesn't matter if you're in a high-rise building, the earth energy is still available to us just by paying attention with our minds. So as you feel your feet on whatever surface they're on, just welcome the earth energy that wants to come into your body. And feel it coming up through your feet, through your legs, through your thighs, and into your seat. Just feel that for a moment. It may be better for you to close your eyes as you're doing this, or stare off to one just in a contemplative way. But just anything that supports you feeling the rising of earth energy through your body into your seat. And then let that earth energy come up to the heart chakra, right here. In Sanskrit, the word for heart means mind also. So this is the center of the heart mind. The word is chitta in Sanskrit. So there we have all this lovely energy supporting us to recognize our inherent constant dignity. So just feel that for a moment. Do you feel stronger? Do you feel more present? Do you feel more centered and grounded? And now we have the next source of energy, which is sky. In Chinese, it's called heaven, but in too many Christians, that's a problem. It's sky, it's space energy. You can imagine it coming down through your crown chakra, down your neck, into your whole body, and joining with earth energy at your heart center, at your heart-mind center. And just feel that. And feel how good it feels to bring these two energies together and to feel them supporting you. You know, we are not alone as lone human actors here. I won't go into this now, but we are working in partnership with life. We're working in partnership with many other positive energies. And this practice of taking your seat is a way to bring them together in your body, in your physical body, but by using your mind. And you're using your energy body as well to do this. Just notice how it feels. Now you can do this practice instantaneously when you're about to have a difficult conversation. If your eyes are closed, you can open them now. You can use this practice standing. You just recall yourself to a better posture, and you quickly bring up the energy, bring down the energy, and lock it right here. You can do that when you're tired. You can do that when you're despairing. You can do that when you're weeping. And in my own experience, which I'm quite blessed by this over and over for many years, regaining our internal dignity through our posture, through taking our seat, even if we're standing up, just accomplishes so much to shift us energetically. We just feel more present and we feel more strong because we've accessed these other energies and combined them within our own physical body. So I'll tell you one story and then I'm curious about your questions. I was consulting to a dear woman friend who's one of the best leaders I've ever worked with. And she was under attack from competitive organizations and the press, and she was really struggling. She had superior achievements, and people were out to get her just because of the nature of her achievements, I think. Anyway, she was very, very fragile and depressed, and I was speaking to her on the phone frequently. And after one conversation, I ended it by saying, which was a teaching I received, just don't be like a wilted flower. You know, that's everything I've been teaching is the opposite of being like a wilted flower, like a dying blossom. And when I said it to her, don't be like a wilted flower, she started laughing almost hysterically because that was her mood. She said, Meg, the whole time we've been talking, I've had my head on the desk. And so just that regaining her posture gave her more strength, it also gave her more clarity, more confidence. So I encourage you to use this. I taught it very formally, but you can use it very quickly. And once you do, you will find that you have the capacity to face reality. You have the capacity to be present for people. And you can, with your strong back and your open heart, you can be the change that we wanted to see in the world. But now it's up to us, moment to moment, person to person, whatever we're doing, to radiate the very best qualities, to embody the very best qualities of what it means to be human. So now I will we'll open the chat, and I will look through your questions and comments and try my best to answer them. So we'll give you a few minutes to load the chat. And
Danke, Meg. Und die Bitte ist, dass ihr jetzt die Fragen auf Englisch in den Chat stellt, sodass die Meg sie direkt lesen kann. Es macht nichts, wenn Fehler drin sind. Die Botschaft wird ankommen.
yes.
2-3 Minuten Zeit, um eure Frage in den Chat zu stellen, und die Meg wird sich dann die Fragen durchlesen und beantworten.
So if there are no questions, I'd like to start.
Now we've got some coming from,
Okay, ja, bitte in den Chat hineinstellen.
Yeah. So Sophie asked me, how do you deal with the pain that can be so overwhelming when facing reality? Because it is not only the fear itself, but the pain that paralyzes me at times. Yeah, this is a definite experience. I think so many of us are feeling it in our bodies, right? Either in our heads, our stomachs, heart pain. So my practice is to do something. So get outside, go into nature, walk my dog, play with a young child, get into my garden, go sit by something beautiful that's natural, whether it's a tree, lean your back against the tree, or be by water. But we have to get out of our minds is the basic thing. You can't think your way. You can't even meditate your way out of this pain because it's physical. So doing something else physical for me is the most powerful antidote. But there's a second one, which is when I'm really struggling with my own fear and feeling it in my body, which I can get very sick these days if I'm not careful. The other thing to do is just find somebody who needs you. Find somebody who needs a conversation, or call somebody who you think would benefit from you. But it's getting out of your head, and then your body will follow suit. It's very important we do these things. So you notice as quickly as you can when your body is indicating you're getting into trouble, that, you're feeling this acute pain. You could also sing, you could dance. Sometimes I'm screaming. I'm chanting a lot, Hindu chants. Just anything to move the energy out of the body. But being outside, being with young children, being helpful to someone else, I find really, really works. Okay. Andrea, how do you deal with news consumption? Which news sources do you find recommendable? This has been a very important and interesting discovery for me because I read 6 newspapers, and I also tune in to Kyiv Independent. And what I'm finding, because I go from the New York Times, which is probably my least favorite at this point, so directed towards American elites, the Washington Post, BBC, The Guardian, and Al Jazeera. And what I'm finding is that the reporting is consistent among those different outlets. This was a shock to me. I also listened to interviews with people who know Russia well or who know Ukraine well. And I want to say that Yuval Noah Harari has become a very good, clear voice about the history of Russia and Ukraine. And of course, he's the one who wrote Homo Sapiens, about the history of humans. I didn't quite agree with his earlier work, but I am learning a lot from him right now. So I find him on YouTube. Okay, can you repeat what you think about public protests? I think they're absolutely necessary. I admire the courage of people who are willingly in Ukraine and in Russia protesting, knowing they're going to get arrested. Because we need to be out there, but to be out there without aggression is the real test here. So in the warrior training that I lead, we make a commitment to not add to fear and aggression. It's a hard, hard job. But in protests, I think, and there are many, many examples of people who are just out there to be present and to keep the temperature down as much as possible. I think that's very, very important action this way. Or if you're not on the streets, what you're doing with your time, with your conversations, what you're doing with your attention, if you're a prayerful person, we need to be praying and offer our support there. We need to be extending ourselves, and that takes many forms. Okay, so what do I think about all the efforts of communities and projects which try to create alternatives to the existing systems? More power to us. This is what I'm calling islands of sanity. But the one thing that has shifted in my own view is all work is local now because we cannot change these larger dynamics and systems. What just happened?
Okay.
Did you? I'm here, but I can.
Julian, bitte die Bildschirmteilen beenden. Michael Krebs, bitte, beendest du bitte das Bildschirmteilen unten? Danke.
Okay, here we're back. Okay. So I call these communities and efforts. I used to believe that if enough of them were created, I've written quite a lot about this, but around 2005, 2000 and up till 2010, but now I call them islands of sanity. They're places of sanctuary, of people remembering what human beings can be together. I think they're essential. I think we need many more of them, but now they are preparing people for a world that fails to work and creating local resilience, local capacities. So I think they're essential, absolutely essential. Okay. So Hema, you're embarrassed by the verbal judgment that Putin is insane.
I was translating a question by.
Okay. I'm sorry. I've listened to a lot of people who knew Putin, who've worked with him, and there's no This is not nonviolent or violent communication. It's an accurate description. And if you fail to notice who this man is and how he's wielding power now and how he is crushing Ukraine, a people that he felt great heart connection with, you just look at his actions. There is no equal to what he's doing to say that I know the U.S. is the major seller of arms. I know that Germany sells weapons. But how are the weapons being used now? What has he created? He is, I'm going to say very clearly, he is a demonic force. He is destroying a country and quite willing to destroy all of us. So I have there's no equivocating here. Would you say this about Hitler? That, well, people are anti-Semitic, so what he did is, this is the equivalent of Hitler, and we see it very clearly early on. Okay, so Christian asks, is it enough to flee from your own fears? I didn't mention the word fleeing from your fears. You actually have to encounter them, recognize them, and, fearlessness is only available through our fear. You have to transit through fear to get to fearlessness. You have to face your fear. So this is not about fleeing at all. That's what hopium is, by the way. It's a form of denial. When we really get fearful, we just flee from the fear and look for something that feels positive in the future. And that's why it's hopium. I mean, there are a lot of things that are positive in the moment. How can one be more constantly in the place of dignity, and how in conversations and exchanges with others spread that so it's somehow contagious? Don't worry about spreading it, just worry about being it, because it is magnetizing. I don't think it's contagious, but people love being with us when we are not fearful, when we're not angry, when we're calm and present, and we're really listening to them. This is our work, to be present for people. And when we're present for people, when we're present to a situation, we do feel dignified. Not in a false, arrogant way. We just, this feels really good to be fully human here. So we don't worry about what happens to others' behavior. We just focus on our own, and that's enough work. Okay, Gudrun. If you are tough and open without fear in situations of great crisis or difficulties, I sometimes get the impression that people don't trust you because you react so differently, while others can take the support. How can I talk better to people that are fearful and aggressive or too hopeful? You can't. Again, I just want to focus us on our own integrity here, our own presence. And then we don't know how people are going to react. That's their deal, right? But I do know from so many experiences that when I am willing to be present for someone, I'm creating space, and they feel more welcome, and they tend to be less fearful and less aggressive. But my job is just me and how I am. And I lose it. I get fearful. I get angry. And then I just practice to forgive myself for that loss and try not to do it again. And I will do it again. But this really is just developing an awareness and an intention for how we want to be. We cannot change other people. You've heard this for decades. We can only change ourselves. And that's what I'm talking about, but in a certain way. Okay. So many dead people, also poor Russian soldiers in Ukraine. Does it help to pray for them, or what is helpful? Well, I think it does. At least what it does is I'm keeping my heart open to all these deaths. Doesn't matter nationality. I mean, these innocent young 18 and 19-year-old soldiers who did not know and still do not know what they're fighting for, Russian soldiers. It's a great, great tragedy for them. My heart goes out to them just as easily as it does to the Ukrainian children, women, soldiers that are being slaughtered. Absolutely. And how do you feel when you're in a prayerful way? I always feel that I'm being I'm soothed by that action. I'm soothed by the practice of praying for other people. And it reduces my fear as well. At least I have something to do. I don't know if it helps, but there are enough actually studies that prayer is felt by other people. But it certainly benefits me to keep my heart open to everyone who is suffering. Okay, how do you know what is needed? You ask. You look around. You keep asking. And you try and not filter it with what I think is needed. You try and develop a clearer perception. Now, this takes training, but you can practice this right now. In fact, I'll just give you this maybe as a closing practice. If you're in a difficult conversation with someone, this is especially true if you're a parent with children, or if you're in a relationship with someone, or if you're in a conflict with anyone. If you just step back for a moment and ask yourself, what do I think I need here? That's the first one. Starts with me. And then, but the second question is to tune in. What do these other people seem to need? You don't know, so it's all qualified. Like, what do I think they need from me? Just by asking that question, and then looking at the two sets of needs, what I thought I needed, what they seem to need, you will come up with a much better, richer offering. It really works so well. I use it all the time with my adult children now. And it really changes the conversations we have. Okay, Alfred, you're going to ask just a question that I think we have to get rid of, basically. If you believe that there are so many different realities out there, and that there isn't one clear reality, you're just going to get yourself in increasing impotence and trouble. There is a reality going out there. You ask any Ukrainian soldier, you ask any Ukrainian aid worker, you ask any Ukrainian who's fleeing or who's huddled in a basement shelter, what is the reality going on here? You're not going to get multiple answers. Well, I think it's this, or it seems to be that. No, we have to develop clearer perception to take in information and not color it with this it's a terrible filter when we decide, well, there are multiple realities, so nothing is real, so I don't have to do a damn thing. In the moment, when people are suffering, that is the reality. And when there is aggression, destroying towns, bombing, killing, that is real. You can deal with that any way you want to, but I think this is an incredibly dangerous withdrawal. It's another form of denial. So, And the reality of a future perspective working together peacefully, it is out of our reach. It's out of the world changed. The world chose militarism. It was always underneath. And now, if you just look at the amount of arms that were available to give to Ukraine from all these different countries, that I found a shocking evidence of how we had already armed the world, thinking there would be no consequence to the major armament providers like the US, Germany, France, and Russia. Well, there are terrible consequences now in the hands of one who is hell-bent on destroying us. So, notice your filters, all of us. I mean, everyone uses the word existential. This is existential. We have never been here before because we're facing climate destruction and human destruction. So you have to decide what your role is and get out of your any myopia and really decide, who do I choose to be at this time for this world, for the people who are suffering. That for me is a meaningful life. It wasn't what I intended, it wasn't what I was doing, but it is what I am totally dedicated to now, and I offer this to you from that experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Ich kann mir vorstellen, dass einige von euch, die das jetzt zum ersten Mal in dieser Deutlichkeit hören von der Meg, ja, dass da viel aufgewühlt ist oder auch vielleicht Irritation da ist und sagt, wie kann man so? Ja? Ich kann von mir berichten, dass es in meiner Konfrontation damit und in meiner Arbeit bei den Warriors for the Human Spirit erleichternd war, nicht mehr zu hoffen, dass etwas irgendwie gut ausgeht, sondern dass ich es tue, egal wie es ausgeht, weil es richtig ist, weil ich an der Stelle bin, wo ich Verantwortung übernehmen kann und helfen kann und etwas beitragen kann, was einen Unterschied macht. Daher danke, liebe Meg, für deinen Input, für deinen Impuls, und wir entlassen dich jetzt zu deinen Enkelkindern. Du betonst immer wieder, dass dass Kinder eine Quelle davon Freude sind und weil sie so ein großes Wunder sind. Und deswegen viel Freude jetzt mit deinen Enkelsöhnen. Und wir haben uns jetzt gedacht, vielleicht ist einige... ja. Ich habe jetzt spontan entschieden, für alle, die jetzt sich noch austauschen wollen und noch...
Thank you very much, all of you.
Vielen Dank. Danke, Meg. Für alle die jetzt noch ein Bedürfnis haben, sich auszutauschen und hier zu bleiben, um das zu verdauen, da kannst du jetzt dann in eine Breakout-Session gehen von einer circa halben Stunde, maximal, je nachdem, wie lange ihr gerne miteinander sein wollt, zu dritt ungefähr, um auszutauschen, was hat das jetzt in dir bewegt. Und die Bitte ist, dass du versuchst, dich beim Sprechen selber zu beobachten, was gerade passiert. Also, dass du dich nicht von deinen eigenen Emotionen oder deinen eigenen Dingen, die jetzt gerade in dir passieren, dass du dich nicht damit identifizierst, sondern eher dich selber beobachtest, was gerade passiert. Sodass du nicht sozusagen noch mehr das eskalierst in dir, sondern eher beobachtend erzählst, was in dir gerade passiert, wenn du das, was du gerade gehört hast, auf dich wirken lässt. Und deswegen, für alle, die bleiben wollen, bleibt einfach hier. Für alle, die jetzt sagen, ich verarbeite das für mich alleine oder noch was anderes vorhaben, kannst du dich jetzt ausklinken, damit wir dann wissen, wie viele Gruppen wir machen. Danke, dass ihr dabei wart. Danke, dass ihr beim Summit dabei seid, und danke dafür, dass ihr den Summit auch weiter verbreitet und dazu beiträgt, dass viele Menschen dabei sein können bei diesen ganz unterschiedlichen Botschaften und bei den ganz unterschiedlichen Gesprächen, unterschiedlichen Perspektiven. Gut, dann verabschieden wir uns von allen, die jetzt rausgehen, und alle, die bleiben wollen, bleiben noch hier. Ich stoppe inzwischen die Aufzeichnung und sage noch einen schönen Abend zu allen, die jetzt hinausgehen. Bitte auch die Aufzeichnung auf YouTube stoppen. Gut. Also alle, die jetzt noch da sind, sind ungefähr noch 50 Menschen. Dann gebe ich euch jetzt in eine Breakout-Session. Die wird circa eine halbe Stunde laufen. Wenn ihr früher aufhören wollt, dann hört einfach früher auf. Ansonsten nach 30 Minuten werden wir schließen mit der Frage,